Thank you.
Okay, we've got 8.5 minutes in here, so we have 13 minutes left. If you'd like, we can. If you want to split this up evenly, she can do that. We can give you the 1 minute warning on your other speakers. What would you like? What's your pleasure? Would you like to do it that way?
Go ahead.
So we got 13 minutes. You want us to throw up a card when we'll divide it up evenly? Is that a yes or a no? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
All right. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
3.5 minutes each then.
Mr. Chairman, members of the panel, good afternoon. My name is Nick Guest, and I'm the State Adjutant Quartermaster of the Veterans of Foreign Wars to the Department of California. The VFW recently opposed the drug purchasing initiative. I'm here today on behalf of the more than 80,000 California veterans our organization represents to speak to you about why we believe this initiative could have negative consequences for California's veterans and possibly veterans nationwide. The United States Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, negotiates special prescription drug discounts with pharmaceutical manufacturers for the benefit of veterans, for a benefit that they earn serving our country. The statewide ballot measure seeks to extend these special price considerations to state government purchasing programs. However, it is unlikely that these special discounts would be sustainable if applied to additional programs in California or other states. In fact, the VA and the U.S. General Accounting Office have repeatedly warned that extending VA pricing to other sizable health care programs could undermine these special price considerations provided to those who served our country. There is also evidence that when VA pricing is extended to other government programs, the costs to the VA increase. This was the case in 1990 when VA pricing was factored into state Medicaid rebate calculations and VA and DoD prescription drug costs increased by tens of millions of dollars. That requirement was later repealed. Our men and women in uniform make many sacrifices to ensure that the freedoms we all enjoy are protected. They are prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, and many do so. When they enter the service, they are promised certain benefits that are meant to match their level of sacrifice. This initiative could undermine one of those benefits. It is our view that the California measure would increase costs on the VA and ultimately on our veterans. Therefore, in order to help protect this benefit for veterans, our organization is joining with most other major veterans organizations in our state in opposing this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Martin, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Los Angeles Wellness Station, a nonprofit which provides health and educational services in South Los Angeles. We are health and education advocates, and we are also health and education navigators. I'm also a program director for the National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day campaign in Los Angeles, and in the past, the president of the National Council of Negro Women. We work in communities of color with people that live below the poverty level and with individuals who have a hard time affording health care and prescription medication, of course. We understand the desire to address health care costs. Unfortunately, this initiative as a policy gives us some concern. We're not quite sure if the whole thing has been looked at thoroughly. So it might not be able to deliver the promises that is put on paper at this point. So we're saying that because it is unclear how it will be implemented, I'm concerned that low-income patients who rely on Medi-Cal free for service for their prescription drugs will be the ones that are caught in the middle of the state insurers and pharmaceutical manufacturers try to sort this initiative out. Californians will be the ones subject to new prior authorization hurdles that could prevent them from getting the medications they need and when they need it. We had an example 2 or 3 days ago where a gentleman came in who didn't have money to afford the bus. He's on Medi-Cal. His medication would have cost him $400 for his heart medicine. And of course he couldn't afford that. So we're now working with him today, my staff is, to help him get that medication that he needs to sustain his life. So what we're looking at, we also think that's the example that I can cite, but this is a daily thing for us as we see it. HIV/AIDS patients could also be disproportionately impacted by this measure. ADAP was the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, does not receive any general fund support, and 2/3 of the funding is through rebates. This whole initiative could eliminate some of that as well. So it would make it very difficult for the people. So what we're looking for as California moves forward to be the greater state that it is, we're looking for accessibility, affordability, availability, and quality health care. So that's why we'd like this, we oppose this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Randall Hager for the California Psychiatric Association. I had some remarks planned, but there's a couple of things that have occurred during the course of the hearing here today that I'd like to report on. What I wanted to focus on was the fact that, first of all, antipsychotics and all the other psychotherapeutic drugs are a very, very big part of the Medi-Cal program. They're used in high numbers. They cost a lot. They go to a lot of people. They provide a lot of benefit. And as we read this, we've heard today about different things that are going to happen in the contracting environment and different options. And what I wanted to do was say that I think our conclusion is that access would end up being decreased, and I'll tell you a little bit why we think that. Mostly it's important to understand that there are risks associated with the restrictions to a psychopharmaceutical formulary that has to do with the drugs that we're talking about for people who have issues with mental illness or with mental health risks. The risks are that if there is any change, the delicacy of stabilization while people are on drugs is really something I cannot underemphasize. So that if you have interruptions in care, such as might be likely with the utilization control policies, with the necessity to consult with the DHCS over a TAR, treatment authorization request for these things, you're going to have some very predictable outcomes. We have data that shows that there is a risk in a gap in medications of from 1 to 10 days, so that the person who does not receive medications that they have been on, it increases the hospitalization risk twofold. If that period goes from 10 to 30 days, the hospitalization risk is threefold. Over 30 days, fourfold. So there are some very, very discrete kinds of risks that are entailed in tinkering with the system of delivery where there's possible delays. And that's an example of some of the risks that entail in those kinds of restrictions. The other thing I would say is that one of the best pieces of evidence, I think, that supports that actually came to me during the course of the hearing. The American Journal of Psychiatry just published a study about the Veterans Administration in which there was a mandate that a certain medication used for depression and used for PTSD not be given above a certain level. That meant that there had to be a titration down of about 35 to 45% in that medication. The result of that was that there were higher hospitalization rates very directly related to that, not only for psychiatric hospitalizations, but also for healthcare issues. There was an increase in the rate of self-injury, and there was an increase in the rate of suicide and death associated with those. So when we think about changes to a delivery system that might entail different kinds of utilization review policies, I think we need to be very, very careful. And it is because of those concerns that the California Psychiatric Association does oppose this measure.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Questions from members? There. Did you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I want to thank the panel for your perspectives, and I do appreciate that there's a difference of perspective on the initiative. I want to just go to kind of the bigger question that we're all grappling with here as policymakers, and that is around skyrocketing drug prices. So we have someone who used to head up pharmacy for Medi-Cal and others of you who are experts in this area. So 2 weeks ago, the federal administrator for Medicare and Medi-Cal said that exploding drug costs are the #1 issue facing healthcare in our country. And a few months ago, CalPERS, which was referenced earlier, which is one of our country's largest health care buyers, saw specialty drug costs soar by 32%. even though it only represented 1% of all prescriptions. And those specialty drugs make up a quarter of our total costs. And let me also say, I don't think there's a single legislator who doesn't think that veterans should get, we all agree that veterans should get fairly priced drugs, but could I assume that each of you agree that we need to address skyrocketing drug prices for everyone? Can I assume that? If any of you disagree with that statement, I'd love to hear, but can we all just agree that we need to address skyrocketing drug prices? Yes? Okay. Given that we all agree with that, what is your solution in how we address skyrocketing drug prices?
Please, no.
And I'd love to ask our expert. You used to manage this for DHCS. What would you do?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for you.
That is the problem right now, isn't it?
That is the problem right now. I think that's a problem that everyone's been grappling with. I would welcome the opportunity to sit down with you and your staff and go over options and discuss the issues related. For example, this particular initiative is a contracting issue. It doesn't, I don't think, get to where the proponents intended it to. So, sitting down on a cooperative basis to talk about things and what works and doesn't work, I think, is about the only way you're going to get to some solutions. If I had a solution, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd probably, be
helping us save billions of dollars.
Be someplace else. Yes.
Does anyone else have ideas on this? To me, that is what I think all of us as policymakers are searching for. There are ways for us to address skyrocketing drug prices.
Okay, so if I was thinking about it, on an unprofessional level, but knowing that the community needs it, it would seem that there would be some kind of restriction on how much you can raise the price. If it costs you 10 cents to make it, then how much profit could you make? Now, I know there's somewhat of a big control, but it might be thought of that way. Because I do know, like, for instance, that the Hep C medicine that was sold such a high price initially, and the person that was selling it for $750 as opposed to, how is that allowed to happen? I know it's free enterprise, but there might be some restrictions we look at that way.
I very much appreciate that answer. In fact, I know that is actually what they do in Europe and in other countries, which is why drug prices in those countries are far less than what we have here. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the intent of those who drafted this measure, to try to anchor a price that we know the pharmaceutical industry is able to be sustained on. So I very much appreciate someone who opposes this measure saying that we should consider potentially some drug price controls on some of the most challenging prices.
Also, I wouldn't want a contractor to say, okay, it's 40% you make. It needs to be a smaller amount so it's more fair to people. Not because that's a big amount too, especially for poor people.
Sure. Other thoughts?
I would note that there has been a history of the legislature grappling with this issue. During, I think it was 2004 and 5, or maybe 3 through 5, a number of measures were before both the Assembly and the Senate. Ultimately, they spanned a range of solutions, but none of those, barring one, actually moved forward. So the fact that indexing is not a new idea today because it was considered then. Price of marketing and ways to address that was considered then but didn't move forward. Also, a drug assistance program for the state was considered and didn't move forward. So the only thing that did emerge from that time that was a solution that everybody could agree on was to create a bulk purchasing pool for our state prisons, our state hospitals, the VA, the CSU, and some other entities in the state to be able to leverage the ability of a larger pool of potential beneficiaries and consumers of those medications to achieve better prices. So I think there may be a need to pick up the conversation that was left in those years, and I don't know where that would go, but certainly we as a psychiatric association, particularly in regard to psychotropic medications, would be willing to enter into that conversation.
And I will say I'm very interested in thinking about this certainly this year and beyond. What I'll just observe in my short time here in the legislature is we have a lot of witnesses who come from the industry and others who are allied with the industry who say that they want to help us tackle the problem, but haven't offered solutions, haven't offered suggestions on how we actually do this. And in the absence of suggestions that work, we as policymakers and members of the public have to have to think of their best solution. And right now, in 2016, here in California, the solution for voters, notwithstanding other solutions, is that we consider tying prices to what we know have been negotiated with the federal government through the VA, which is why I've been a supporter of this measure. Let me just end with one thought or comment, which is I know we all agree that we want drug companies to be investing in research and development, and that is what I understand to be a major objection to this, that somehow this will impact research and development. There are studies that show that drug companies spend 19 times the amount on television, marketing, and advertising compared to research and development. 19 times. And from my perspective, I think if we were to increase R&D by 5 times, you could still spend 14 times as much on R&D, on marketing and advertising, than on what you're spending on research and development today. And so if that's the case, again, this is, I want to have an open, transparent dialogue about where this is going. I'm asking for solutions. I do hope the industry and their allies could offer us solutions, because until that happens, we're grappling with billions and billions of dollars of costs that are threatening to swamp our healthcare budgets, the wallets and pocketbooks of everyday consumers, and the most sick Californians in our state. And I don't think that's acceptable. So I appreciate the dialogue. I very much hope that all of you will be able to help us think through a solution. If you don't agree with this one, what is something that you can support? And I hope what is something that perhaps the industry can support as well.
Thank you. Senator Monti?
Thank you. I want to thank members of this panel as well. At least 3 of you are here articulating concerns about unintended consequences to very specific populations. And sir, you're not representing pharma, are you? Or are you?
I'm here as a consultant analyst regarding the initiative for the I guess you'd say the no side of the initiative.
Right. So it seems that an overriding current throughout this hearing, when we talk about market forces, countries where these drug prices are lower usually have bigger buying pools. Canada, England, countries that have one thing in common: universal health care system or a single-payer health care system. And it appears what we're trying to do through this initiative is to try to affect a stronger market participation or greater bargaining power for the state buying for one of 50 states vis-a-vis the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not posing so much of a question as just kind of an observation that you started in response to a question by Assemblymember Chu that everyone on this panel and certainly everyone in this room kind of nods their heads in agreement that we would all like to see the high cost of pharmaceuticals come down. So then the question is, so what is a path there? Nobody had a ready response. This proposed ballot measure attempts to create a mechanism that would set some ceilings for state purchasing of pharmaceuticals. But if this is not the path to do that, and if the fears of unintended consequences are in fact real, I think you'll find, just like we all share a shared objective of reducing high pharmaceutical costs, I think it would be fair to say we all share the aspiration of not having unintended consequences, not having people hurt or denied access to a life-saving drug or a stabilizing drug because we don't get it right or the voters don't get it right. So again, I'm not offering the solution either, other than there are countries through larger buying power that have been able to use market forces because of their large buying power. Every pharmaceutical manufacturer would like to get the Canada account. Why is that? Because it's a large account. So what I see this bill trying to chip away at is to use the buying power of California public entities and a mechanism of setting a ceiling as a way to get on top of these out-of-control costs. And barring a better solution, at least the conversation that's prompted around this proposed ballot measure has brought us to the table, has brought this conversation to the state legislature, and will bring it to the people of the state of California. I would expect, however, that the same inordinate percentages of pharmaceutical money used for marketing will also be used in an effort to defeat this ballot measure. Now, that's not the purpose of the hearing here today, but again, we are on an unlevel playing field, and the people that are most adversely impacted by that are people dependent on public programs, dependent on charitable programs to secure often life-saving drugs. So I don't know, I'll just close again. It's not a question, it's kind of a rambling comment, but to thank the chair and the co-chairs, Senator Hernandez, as well, for convening this. I know we're required to do this type of hearing by law, but I found it very useful, and want to thank those that have joined us today to at least help focus some of the conversation and some of the questions. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take your comments, Mr. Chu, as a close as well. Are you okay with that? Or do you have something else? I'll give you, as the chair, I get the chance to close, but go ahead. If you have another 30 seconds, just go ahead, please.
Thank you, and I also want to thank the committee and the chair for moving this forward. And I know, Dr. Wood, this is something you've been thinking about quite a bit. It is my hope that, regardless of what happens in November, this is a conversation that needs to continue. I think it's a little bit of a bummer that at this moment there are only 3 of us here. You referenced the fact that this legislature 10 years ago tried to move forward a number of different proposals and they all failed. And I think if there were more legislators that were engaged in thinking about this, we might be able to move forward. To me, that is a reason why this ballot initiative is potentially so important, because the legislature has failed to act. Regardless of whether there's a solution or not, we haven't been able to do anything. And this measure does seem to move the conversation forward, which I think is important. That being said, I know this will not be the last conversation on the topic, and I welcome thoughts and questions, not just from the panelists, but from anyone in the audience and any members of the public on how we tackle skyrocketing drug costs.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chu, and I would thank my fellow members and my fellow chair, Dr. Hernandez, for participating. I'm still going to take public comment, but I want to make a couple of statements before we do that. Obviously, this is a very, very difficult subject and very, very complicated. I'm concerned at this point that the LAO doesn't really feel they have the answers to be able to analyze the impact fully. That's of concern to me. On the other hand, I'm really concerned about the skyrocketing prices here and the challenges that we face. I committed to Assemblymember Chu earlier that my desire to convene additional oversight hearings and hearings on this issue. I think in general my frustration echoes his in many ways. As we convene so many difficult issues, we are often encountered with the answer, "No, I don't like your solution," and that often becomes the premise of how we debate issues in this body. What we really need at some point is to sit around a table and realize that everybody has skin in the game, and how do we ultimately get to a solution? It's not going to be pretty for everybody, and so no isn't the answer for everything, and I think that's why we see initiatives come forward, because we have a difficult time. So I'm committed to working on this issue. I know Mr. Chu is committed to working on this issue, and we will have at least one, maybe multiple additional hearings on this going forward. The challenge continues. It's not going anywhere, and whether this initiative is successful or not, this is not the total solution, in my opinion. We have more work to do on this issue. So I want to thank everybody who's participated today. I did commit to taking. I know my colleagues have other commitments. We've actually gone past 4 o'clock, but I will stay for public comment and allow anybody who has. I'd like to see a show of hands. How many people want to say something? And knowing that we are going to be at 30 minutes, seeing that number of hands, and if you could just get in line in the queue here, then I could judge how much time to give you all. So I don't want to cut any. I don't want to. If it ends up being 30 people, you got a minute, and we'll start waving the flag now. But so is that going to be? Is anybody else going to want to speak? Let me just get. If you can let me know. Okay, so how about give you a couple minutes each, and we'll go ahead.
My name's Kevin Modis. I'm with the California Brain Tumor Association, and I think the best way to reduce spending on prescription drugs is for the state to stop funding wireless projects that expand wireless radiation exposure that has been shown to increase cancer, neurological problems, immune system problems, and reproductive harm. And there are thousands of studies listed in the bioinitiative.org, and this is also stated in the California Medical Association Resolution 107-14. We now have the mechanism by which wireless radiation causes cancer and other serious diseases, and we need to these two committees need to begin to act to protect our population, as have other countries. Israel recently pulled out wireless from their schools and put in wired internet connections, as is very important. It's time we protect innocent people who are literally suffering and dying from their cell phones, living near cell towers, or due to Wi-Fi in their home environments. It is absolutely ridiculous that we're now covering our cities with wireless radiation, putting it in our schools, and not acknowledging these health effects which have been proven over the last 30 years. It's time we act to protect, and the California Brain Tumor Association is strongly in favor of this bill, but we also want common sense measures that's not going to increase our disease overall for the population of California, and we want more people to understand the risk and to take action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jesse Brooks, and I'm from Oakland, California. I'm actually a face of a person living with HIV. Also, I have diabetes, and I don't actually pay for the drugs out of my pocket, but I see the expense sheets at the end of the month. And my concern is for the future. Because if we keep allowing the pharmaceutical companies to gouge the state, eventually the system will crash, and I'm concerned that I won't be able to get the life-saving drugs that I need. I also work with a lot of HIV-positive people, but we're talking about also senior citizens that use heart medicines, diabetes, and I know senior citizens that have to cut their drugs in half just to try to make it through the month. So we've already regulated the doctors and hospital visits. It's time to regulate the pharmaceutical companies and our spending, and we can put the money somewhere else that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Eduardo Martinez with the California Medical Association. Our Board of Trustees recently took a position to oppose this initiative. Obviously acknowledge the very real problem of high-cost prescription drugs, but feel like this is not the right solution to that problem. Obviously, we've been concerned about funding to the Medi-Cal program, and to the extent that this exacerbates ongoing funding problems to the Medi-Cal program, we are very concerned about that. So thanks very much for holding this hearing.
Thank you.
Could I make one quick question to CMA? Okay.
My name's Bibi Marzette from Oakland. I'm a PWA, and it's not my first rodeo. It's not so pretty as you stated up there. I'm losing benefits. I don't know if I'll be able to perform with my medication, and it's quite frightening. Please help. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairmen and women. I'm Marcus Oliphant from Oakland, California. I'm an advocate, and I believe I do support this measure for passing the California Relief Drug Act for 2016. I believe that it'll benefit the people who are less fortunate than others, and it will also bring more it'll benefit more patients because we're living longer. And we need help, and we need the help, and we have services here available for us. And so what I believe is that we just need to, just keep negotiating. That's what it is. Just keep negotiating so we can get it right to help the people.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Prinzing. I'm an attorney with the law firm Remcho, Johansson, and Purcell. And I'd like to briefly address some of the questions that have been raised about the confidentiality of pricing information from the Department of Veterans Affairs. There is no federal statute on the books that requires the VA to keep this information confidential, and the VA has yet to take the position that there are, in fact, contract provisions in place that require them to keep this information confidential. And even if such contracts exist under the Freedom of Information Act, the VA would be required to make its records public unless that pricing information fits within an exception to the Freedom of Information Act. For example, it would have to be a trade secret. A trade secret is the kind of thing that protects the drug manufacturing process, the procedures for actually producing drugs, not a price. So at this point in time, there is no reason to conclude that this information from the VA is in fact confidential. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ms. Vicky. I'm from San Francisco. I've been HIV positive 22 years, heart disease 12 years. I just had cervical cancer procedure April 28th. I'm glad to be here. This afternoon, I've heard a lot here on our medicine. In our community, I'm here for the people, the seniors, I am also a senior, that have their heart medication and their diabetes medicine, and they go to the same doctor, and they have to pay this cost. And my boyfriend has the same diabetic medicine that my mother has, and he doesn't have to pay for anything, and they go out and they sell their drugs on the street. If they took this lower the cost of drugs act, if this was to go through, I think it would cut a lot of the street selling of street drugs. They couldn't sell our pharmaceutical drugs if you didn't make them so high, and they couldn't. And these women would take their medications. They're not taking their HIV medication because of their low income, and they're able to get $1 off the street. I didn't know one of these drugs you could get $5 on the street for. Well, I take my medication daily. My mother pays for her insulin. She has served her country. She has taken care of over 60 people in the community. That's where this man that's a veteran can get his pain medicine and he can sell it for another addiction. I'm against it. I am for lowering the cost of drugs for me and my family.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Louis Thompson. I'm from Oakland. I am living with HIV since '87. I am grateful for Medi-Cal because it's allowed me to stay alive. I am also concerned with the fact that the drug companies are making what I consider a huge benefit at the cost of the individuals in California. I find that this passing of this act would aid in the start of controlling the pricing of drugs, not only for California, but for the country. It is unfair that we have to pay so much more than other countries for the same product. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jimmy Jackson with Biocom, representing 750 member companies across the Southern California life science community. This measure, as has been mentioned several times, is likely unworkable, and Biocom is opposed.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Eve Bukowski, representing the California Life Sciences Association. We also have 750 members across the entire life sciences spectrum, from the academic institutions to the biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies, diagnostics, all of those who employ over hundreds of thousands of employees in our state. Also wanted to, as a personal as a personal statement, I also have been living with stage 4 colon cancer since 2008, and I very much depend on these companies to be able to create and innovate, have incredible research and development so that I can stay alive. And also, I'm very fortunate because I have access to these products, these incredible products that have kept me alive for this many years. But I want to make sure that all of my fellow cancer patients and all those who are living with these terrible diseases have access to these amazing products, and that they continue to innovate and grow. So therefore, on behalf of both CLSA and also myself as a patient, we strongly are opposed to this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Fred Noer. I represent PhRMA, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, and we are opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole Rice, California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We also associate our comments with and the concerns raised by the opposition on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I want to thank everybody. I think our members made closing statements. Appreciate you being here today, and we'll look forward to learning more as we go forward, and we'll see what the outcome of this is in November. Thank you very much.